Today I will show you 5 different mistakes beginners make when editing photos. I will show how amateurs edit the photo and later show how pro edited the same photo. So let's straight away. So what amateur will do, they will just go straight away, increase contrast here. They will go straight away, increase saturation, vibrance. They will also just put much more clarity and create a little even more contrast with blacks and whites. Then they will try to apply color grade. For example, like this. And they will go much too further with that. Then they will just want to play with temperature, emphasizing the color grade. And at the end, they will even put it like this. So that's how this picture will look like edited by amateur. So let's save it. And now let's reset all the grades. And I will show you how professional will edit the photo. So first thing, professional will start with turning into black and white, because that's in this mode, it's much easier to assess the right exposure of the picture. And before doing anything with contrast, first thing is just to editing exposure, using exposure in the black and white mode. So I want to extract a little more details. So I'm increasing the exposure. It overexpose the background, so I'm going down with the highlights to get some details of it. I want a little more details on the front. And adding a little more details here. I'm almost not touching the whites. Okay. Now I'm back here, and now I can do the final touches. As you see, I have a feeling that this is a little too brighter, so I'm just going a little lower with exposure and balancing it. But as a last step, the majority of the exposure balancing is in black and white mode. Second thing is I'm not touching contrast here. So what I'm doing is I'm playing a little with blacks, playing a little with whites, just like this. I can also use the curve, but at this point I'm leaving a contrast basically for the last step, not as the first step. That's the most important thing. Saturation. I'm not using this saturation and vibrance slider. I'm doing straight down to the calibration section, and I'm using those sliders to calibrate the image, the saturation of the image. They work in the way that it's more natural, because when you're touching red primary, you're not touching only reds, but you're also balancing a little the greens and blues. But I feel that the picture is right now a little oversaturated, so I'm balancing it just a little with the saturation slider over here. Next thing is I want to apply the color grade. So I'm doing similar thing to have a similar grading as you see. And what I'm trying to do is I mentioned about the contrast. So the video about the contrast is over here when I'm explaining different way of adjusting contrast. But here I want to create a color contrast between elements. So I'm not increasing the saturation of all the entire picture. I just want to select 2 colors and increase saturation of them. So the blues of the ocean and the reds of the clothes here. And we have some greens over here, and I'm just lowering a little those greens because I don't want everything to be oversaturated. I want the subject and the background of the image play nicely with each other. I can play a little with the temperature, but you need to be very cautious about this. And when playing with temperature, the most important thing is to understand the overall vibe of the picture. This picture is taken late afternoon, so it has already some shadows. So you can go a little higher with temperature, but still you cannot create too much shadows and darkness in that picture because it's still almost midday. So there is a bright image. You need to keep this vibe awake. So now we are going into the last step. So you want to protect blacks and whites from being colored during color grading. So the easiest way to do the compensation of it and protection is to just select luminance range and select blacks and whites, and you can do this by inverting selection and just going like this. Okay, this is what we are looking for. And what I'm going to do is I'm just lowering saturation a little, and that makes blacks to be black instead of colored black, and whites to be white instead of being colored white. That's one of the most common mistake people do when they are color grading. Okay, and now it's the time for the last step. And in the last step, we are going to add a little more contrast to overall picture. And we are going to also protect the blacks and whites from being clipped or being just too black. So I'm adding 2 control points before the end of the curve and after the beginning of the curve, and just taking the white point and the black point, white point lower, black point a little up. And now it's a time when we can start touching clarity a little, and we can touch a little contrast to get the right look as we want. Now, okay, let's compare. So this is the original and after with the professional edit. And this is edit made by amateur. You see the huge difference. The picture is way too much saturated. There's too much contrast. The blacks are not protected and they are even colored. And the pro version is much more soft. It still has details in the blacks. It has a nice color grade. You can right now play with what kind of color grade, how intense you want to be, but everything is well balanced. And this is the difference between amateur picture and the professional edited picture. Thanks a lot. Watch this next video to learn something new about photo editing.